Hey everybody, Congressman Mark Green, and it's Whiteboard Wednesday. We're going to talk a little bit about how inflation impacted the banks. And a lot of them, we got, I guess, about 20 banks that are in trouble right now. We've had 2 or 3 that have failed just recently. First, I want to explain inflation. I know I've done this on previous whiteboards, but I'm shocked at how many, even of my own colleagues here in Congress, particularly on the other side of the aisle, don't get it. But basically, the price of goods in the economy is the ratio between the amount of money in the system and the amount or supply of goods in the economy. And if you increase the amount of money in the economy and you keep the supply of goods the same, there's more money available to purchase the same fixed amount of goods. And what happens is the price of those goods increases. And that's essentially the definition of inflation. What happened? Well, unfortunately, in this economic crisis, the federal government, under the leadership, of the Democrat leaders, they massively spent during COVID. There were some Republicans too, to be completely honest, who were quite okay with that. But it just continued and continued. Trillions and trillions of dollars dumped into the system. Meanwhile, we have a supply chain crisis caused by the COVID virus, the disruption of the supplies from China. We had a president who essentially waged a war on the oil and gas industry, which when you do that, you decrease the production of goods in our economy. So it also decreases the supply of goods along with the supply chain issues. And then this president actually had more regulations in his first year as president than any president in the history of the country. And regulations are a cost of doing business. If you increase the costs of doing business to produce one unit or one widget, you actually decrease the supply of goods in the economy. So massive increases in spending, massive decreases, and we saw this huge rapid increase in inflation. We knew that was going to happen. Unfortunately, those bills passed, the money happened, the regulations happened. When you add all those dollars to the decreasing supply of goods, you get massive inflation, and that's what we had. Well, there was a response. The Dems responded, the Democrat leadership responded, and the Fed responded. Well, the Fed did the right thing, but maybe in a wrong way, but they increased the interest rates. We would expect that. Should have done it a lot sooner, but they did it. And that is intended, if you increase the interest, the cost of money, you decrease the supply of money in the economy. Well, what did the Democrat leaders do before they got out of the House of Representatives control? They passed another $1.7 trillion of spending. So it's sort of this push-pull thing, right? Well, the net effect is inflation is still 6%, 3 times normal. And one of the things to look in the Fed is, this is actually the current increase in interest rates. And you can see every other historical response to inflation in the past, much slower. In fact, this is the fastest rate increase in the history of our country, in the history of the Fed, ever. And what happened to the banks is the banks were investing in long-term government bonds, particularly some banks did it very poorly. So the banks own some responsibility in this, especially Silicon Valley. When the rates started going up this fast, their bonds that they had previously bought went negative in value. When their investors, or the people who had cash in the banks, started demanding that cash, really because with a higher interest rate, they can make more money elsewhere, those banks had to sell undervalued bonds, and basically, just to meet the cash demands, they went negative and the banks failed. And really, the start of this, and granted, there were mistakes made by the banks, but the start of this was right here, was stupid monetary policy and a Fed that decided a massive, rapid increase would fix the problem. Well, when you keep spending, it doesn't fix the problem. That's Whiteboard Wednesday.